So I want to talk about the metric versus the imperial system because this is something that fascinates me completely to no end, right? And it's a very interesting dichotomy between the two. I like the imperial system. I think the imperial system is fucking awesome, and I'm controversial in that regard. I've also said that like pennies are a great form of money, and if we had a reverse inflation day, just like a leap year where we simultaneously reversed inflation and got rid of some of our excess money, then we could just use pennies again. I like pennies more than I like cryptocurrency. I collect pennies like an absolute fervent maniac. But I'm also outspoken in my support of the imperial system because I don't like a lot of stuff that Britain gave America, but hot damn, I like the idea that America is one of the only countries left in the world. I think like Myanmar does, or a couple other do, but we're like the only country left in the world that has a unique, cool system of measurement. It's like our own, and we can say this is ours, and I think that's awesome. And it really makes me sad to think that there are future generations that might not have the opportunity to understand, what a foot or a mile or a yard is, because it's like cursive writing. There's something very special and neat about it. And even if cursive isn't the most efficient anymore, it is faster than manuscript writing, and that's why it was invented. And likewise, the imperial system of measurement performs its function really, really well. It's a great system of measurement if you actually just bother to use it. But I think much like with the English language, a lot of people these days are just too fucking lazy to learn the imperial system. So you get gripes like, oh, I can't remember how many feet are in a mile. I can't remember how many feet are in a yard, because it's random numbers. It's not really random numbers. The amount of feet in a yard or whatever has a rich, ornate history tied to it, but you just don't know that because you're too lazy to check it out and learn about measurements. I actually really like measurements besides metric ones, because they're some of the only ways in which we humans have endowed mathematics with like humanity. It's very cool to think that the length of a foot is like the length of some king or something, or like, the length of a cubit is your arm or whatever. I think that's awesome that we used to use body parts as measurements. I think that's really, really fucking neat. And if you just take one body part, not like variable body parts, but you just take like one standard measurement, like if you say a foot is a foot, then that is just a foot, and you can't have like more than one foot. If you have a standardized foot, the same way if you have a standardized cubit, there are several standardized cubits out there. I love outdated forms of measurement that are even more outdated than imperial. I love the fucking, there's like tons. There's cubits and hogsheads and barrels. I like all that shit. I like how we've, over time, developed ways of measuring quantity and length and assigned fun names to it, like hogshead. I think that's fucking awesome. And the metric system, in the past I've compared it to fascism because it's really what it is. It's just insisting that every country worldwide get rid of their unique, cool system of measurement with unique names and the cool ideas behind it and the rich history, and just says, no, let's make it standardized and sciencey and fucking mathy, and let's be little Poindexters about it. And, this is the same as telling every country in the world that they need to speak English. It's an eradication of culture, and I don't stand for that. And a lot of people don't consider systems of measurement as a form of culture, but they really are. In like Egypt, the pyramids, they were built using a unique form of measurement that we don't know that much about because it's been eradicated over time. It's been lost to the ages. I think that's stupid, Like, if you can build the pyramid with these outdated, non-metric forms of measurement, you can build anything using just standardized forms of measurement that have a set length or mass or whatever, but they're not, they're not variable, but they're not metric, because the only reason people say the metric system is superior is because its stupid prefix system, which is as hard to memorize as the imperial system. Like somehow you can't memorize how many inches are in a foot or whatever, but you can memorize fucking mega and deca and hexa and, you know, all this prefix bullshit that goes like, you know, it's just like repetitive. Mega and heca and dexa and lexa and fexa and perplexa and fucking, you know. If you have standardized units of measurement that are consistent, like anywhere you go, a foot's a foot, then it doesn't matter, because you can measure things in foot. You can build a fucking rocket in feet and it'll work. You know, that's what we did with the fucking moon missions. And there's that one point where the European Space Agency and NASA worked on something together, and it didn't fit because they mixed up inches with centimeters. That's not even easy to do. Like, an inch is 2.54 centimeters. So, like, I don't know how they fucking did that. That's not the imperial system's fault. That's the stupid scientists' fault for not checking with each other. Point being, you can build anything in inches or feet, and it doesn't fucking matter, because the metric system is based off like a fucking Planck length. And in most projects in the real world, outside the quantum realm, you don't need that level of like anal retentive precision. I feel like the only person using the metric system would be fucking Phil Hartman, you know, anal retentive chef. But the metric system is for dopes, and I'm sick of hearing all this metric propaganda. I'm sick of hearing about how great the metric system is. It's stupid. It's a dumb system. It's devoid of character. It's devoid of life. And I think math is already boring enough. You know, I'm a much more language-oriented person. So at the very least, I can kind of get behind measurements like cubits, because I think they're cool. You know, because they were used to build the fucking Hanging Gardens of Babylon and the Colossus of Rhodes and shit. And they're human constructs. All of math is just a human construct at the end of the day. We don't like to acknowledge that, but it is. It's just a means of perceiving the universe. That doesn't mean it's the underlying fabric of the universe. That's why I fucking hate that Douglas Adams shit about, oh, math is the answer to everything. No, it's fucking not. You don't know that. Math is a human construct, just like everything. There's no way to tell what's beyond your perception. Math might be intrinsically tied to deeper truths and secrets beyond the universe, but ultimately it's just a human construct. So you don't need to pretend like metric is superior to imperial. That's just fucking stupid, because you can use either of them to build anything. I could build a bridge in smoots. Smoots are interesting. There's this guy, he's asked to measure a bridge with the length of his body, and they did an exact conversion of how tall Smoot was, how long he was, and it was an exact, you know, amount of feet and a decimal point of feet. And you can measure things in Smoots. You can. I could measure things in Nicks if I just noticed how tall I was. Took a measurement of that. I could build a bridge and measure it in Nicks relative to feet, and that would work fine. And it doesn't fucking matter. None of it fucking matters, because so long as you have a standardized measurement, you say that's a floor or that's a gypnip, then, you know, it is, because all this stuff is made up. It's all just a human construct. So I guess that's what I mean to say about imperial being better than metric. Not because it's more exact per se. It is exact in the real world outside of like microscopic environments. But I just like the imperial system because it has more humanity to it, and I dislike what metric represents. I think it's sad that up in Canada they just have like kilometers everywhere. It must be so lifeless and boring, just on the highway and you see a kilometer sign. Blah. There's some really funny peanut strips from like the 70s, back when he thought that America was going to go metric. That was a big thing for a while in the 70s. Everyone thought that America was going to finally go metric, and then everyone realized, no, America's not going to do that. We don't give a shit, you know. Well, like, there's a funny strip with Peppermint Patty where she's like trying to learn the metric system, and it's like so stupid. And that's a pretty funny comic strip. You should check that out. It's like, think metric, And Peppermint Patty's like, how the fuck do I do this? This is stupid. That's a damn funny comic. Well, that was the thing a while back in the 70s, but then we realized, no, we're just not gonna do it. And I fucking like how America keeps its old system. That's awesome, you know. It's very cool. And I'm on record. I'm not big into science and math and stuff because it's very like elitist and full of itself. And nowhere is that more apparent than in the fucking metric system. Maybe the best example. I'm just gonna give you this and then I'm gonna pop off, right? This is a great example, right? the temperatures, right? Now you'd think that people would just be able, you know, not to make it a national thing. You could just use Fahrenheit to measure minute differences in temperature, Celsius to measure a little larger differences in temperature, Kelvin to measure large differences in temperature, like the insides of stars and shit. But people in Britain and shit are still like really haughty about using the Celsius system. Oh, we can't use the Fahrenheit system. But the Fahrenheit system makes more sense than Celsius because 100 degrees Fahrenheit is about the hottest day you'll ever get. 100 degrees Celsius is like boiling or whatever. 0 degrees Fahrenheit is like the coldest day you'll ever get. At least here in Denver, which I tend to think is a pretty, you know, normal-ass climate, which kind of exemplifies like the most normal climate it's possible for Earth to get. 100 degrees Fahrenheit is about the hottest day you'll get. 0 degrees Fahrenheit is about the coldest day you'll ever get. And this makes complete fucking sense to me. And if I had to switch to Celsius tomorrow, where the hottest day was fucking 50 Celsius or 40 Celsius or however much fucking it is, that'd be fucking nonsense. Like, people just have to admit, a system where you go from 0 to 100 is more round, right? 100 is a more round number than fucking 45 or whatever, surely. Surely that's the case. 100 is an easier number to remember. Even if you're a fucking math nerd, you have to admit that. It's a more round number. So measuring temperature in Celsius is fucking stupid. It just is. It's a fool's errand. Like, maybe it's great if you're measuring temperatures are slightly hotter, like a boiling pot of water or whatever, but if you're measuring, like, the temperature of Earth, you're not going to effectively be able to measure it with Celsius. So it just, like, doesn't make any fucking sense. So there's a great example of imperial being better than metric, you know. Prove me wrong here. Oh, wow, you know, I measure everything in Celsius. No, you fucking don't. You're a liar. That's a good example that I like to bring up every so often. If someone's like, metric is better. Metric, you should just switch to metric. You know, again, it's just like a form of ironically, imperialism. You know, the metrics got going on, just trying to eradicate all these centuries of history that are like in the cubit, pyramid inch, you know, all these hectare, all these great units of measurement, you know, and I don't see why metric can't just coexist with them. You know, it's sad. It's sad. It's really sad that we've gotten to such a level that we're pedantic about the way we fucking measure things. You know, just use a fucking cup. You don't need to measure everything in ounces. Fuck's sake. Anyway, yeah, or is ounces metric? Whatever, milliliter. Yeah, measure your cake in fucking milliliters. Shit. Oh, metric. That gets to me. Anyway, yeah, that's all I really had to say.